You know that moment when your entire world shatters in front of 100 people? When the one person who's supposed to protect you becomes the one who destroys you? I lived that moment, and it happened at my sister's wedding. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how my father chose applause over his own daughter, how he humiliated me in the cruelest way possible, and how I made sure he would never forget what he did. But let me take you back to where it all started, because this wasn't just about one terrible moment. This was years in the making. Growing up, I was always the invisible child. My sister Claire was the golden one, the pretty one, the successful one, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. And me? I was just there, the backup daughter, the one they turned to when Claire was busy. I tried everything to get their attention. I excelled in school, I volunteered, I helped around the house without being asked. But nothing ever seemed good enough. Claire would get a B and they'd throw a party. I'd get straight A's and they'd nod and say, "That's nice, dear." I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was strong enough to handle it. That their approval didn't define me. But deep down, it hurt. Every single day, it hurt. Then Claire got engaged to Marcus, this wealthy investment banker from the city, and suddenly our family became a circus. My mother was obsessed with planning the perfect wedding. My father bragged to everyone about his daughter marrying into money. And me, I was expected to smile and play the supportive sister. I did play that role because despite everything, I loved Claire. She wasn't cruel to me, she just existed in a spotlight that I could never reach. And I had accepted that, or so I thought. The wedding was set for late June at this beautiful vineyard estate. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be Instagram worthy. Everything had to scream, "Look how successful our family is." My mother assigned me tasks, lots of tasks. I was the unpaid wedding coordinator, basically. I picked up decorations, confirmed with vendors, handled the seating chart drama, and did 1,000 other things that nobody thanked me for. Claire did appreciate it, though. She'd text me late at night saying, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Em." Those messages kept me going. At least someone noticed. 2 weeks before the wedding, Claire asked me to be her maid of honor. I was shocked. She had 3 best friends who I assumed would fight over that position, but she chose me, her sister. "You've done so much for me," she said, hugging me tight. "I want you standing beside me on the most important day of my life." I cried. Actual tears of happiness? Maybe I did matter. Maybe I was finally being seen. My father's reaction was different. When Claire announced it at dinner, he just grunted and said, "Well, don't mess it up, Emma." Then he turned to Claire and started talking about the wedding toast he was planning. A toast all about her, about how proud he was, about what an amazing daughter she'd become. I sat there, fork in hand, feeling that familiar ache, but I pushed it down. This was Claire's moment, not mine. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. It was elegant, expensive, and filled with Marcus's wealthy relatives. I felt out of place in my simple dress while everyone else wore designer everything. During dinner, my father stood up to give a speech. He talked about Claire's childhood, her achievements, her beauty, her kindness. He made jokes that had everyone laughing. He got emotional and wiped away tears. Then, right at the end, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And of course, Emma helped with some of the planning. So, thanks for that, kiddo." Some of the planning. Thanks for that, kiddo. 3 months of work, hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars of my own money spent. And I got one dismissive sentence. Marcus's mother leaned over and whispered, "You must be so proud of your sister. Not, 'You did a great job.' Not, 'Thank you for your hard work.' Just, 'Be proud of Claire.'" I smiled. I nodded. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes. But I pulled myself together. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow, I'd stand beside my sister and be happy for her. Tomorrow, I'd be the bigger person. I had no idea what tomorrow would actually bring. The wedding day started beautifully. The weather was perfect. The venue looked like something out of a fairy tale. Claire was radiant in her dress. Everything was going according to plan. I helped Claire get ready, fixed her veil about 20 times, and made sure she had everything she needed. We took photos together. She held my hand and said, "I'm so glad you're here." For a moment, I felt like I belonged. The ceremony was perfect. Claire and Marcus exchanged vows that made everyone cry. I stood there in my maid of honor dress, holding her bouquet, feeling genuinely happy. This was a good day. This was a day where family came together. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception area. There was a beautiful fountain in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by flowers and lights. It was the centerpiece of the venue. Everyone kept taking photos near it. The reception started with cocktails and appetizers. I made sure everything was running smoothly, checking with the catering staff and the DJ. My mother saw me and said, "Emma, stop working. You're a guest today." But I wasn't really a guest, was I? I was the helper, the invisible one, the one who made sure everyone else had a good time. Then came the father-daughter. For dance, my dad took Claire onto the dance floor, and they swayed to some classic love song. Everyone watched with adoring eyes. People were filming, cameras were flashing. My father looked so proud, so happy, so completely in love with his perfect daughter. I stood at the edge of the crowd watching, clapping when everyone else clapped, smiling when everyone else smiled. When the dance ended, my father hugged Claire, whispered something in her ear that made her laugh, and then kissed her forehead. The DJ announced that it was time for the best man speech, followed by the maid of honor speech. My stomach dropped. I had prepared a speech, of course, but suddenly standing there, knowing I'd have to speak in front of all these people who barely acknowledged my existence, I felt terrified. The best man gave a funny, charming speech that had everyone laughing and cheering. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the microphone with my index cards, my hands shaking slightly. I looked out at the crowd, at least 150 people staring at me. I started my speech. I talked about growing up with Claire, about the memories we shared, about how happy I was for her and Marcus. My voice was steady. I was doing okay. Then, about 2 minutes into my speech, I saw my father get up from his table. He was walking toward me. I thought maybe he wanted to add something to my speech, a supportive moment between father and daughter. I paused and smiled at him. "Dad?" He reached me, and for a split second, I thought he might hug me, tell me I was doing great. Instead, he grabbed my arm. Hard. His grip was tight, almost painful. "That's enough, Emma," he said quietly, but into the microphone. Everyone heard it. I stared at him confused. "What?" "You're rambling. Making this about you. Let's let Claire have her moment." The crowd went silent. Awkwardly, painfully silent. "Dad, I'm just—" "Come on," he interrupted, pulling me away from the microphone. "Let's get you away from the spotlight before you embarrass yourself more." He was leading me away, in front of everyone, treating me like a child who'd misbehaved. My face burned with humiliation. People were watching, whispering. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked amused. And then we reached the fountain. I don't know if he planned it, I don't know if it was some twisted idea of a joke, but he positioned me right at the edge of the fountain in front of everyone. "My daughter, Emma, everyone," he announced loudly, his voice booming, "always trying so hard to be noticed." And then he shoved me. Not hard enough to hurt me, but hard enough to send me stumbling backward into the fountain. I fell into the water with a splash that echoed through the entire courtyard. Cold water soaked through my dress. My hair was drenched. My makeup ran down my face. And the crowd? The crowd laughed. They actually laughed. Someone yelled, "That's one way to cool off." My father stood there, grinning, basking in the attention. He raised his hands like a showman who'd just performed a great trick. And people clapped. They actually clapped. I sat there in the fountain, water dripping from my hair, my dress ruined, my dignity shattered. I looked up at my father, expecting, I don't know, regret, an apology, something. But he just winked at me and said, "Lighten up, Emma. It's just a joke." Then he walked back to his table, high-fiving a few guests along the way, but I pulled myself out of the fountain, soaking wet, shivering despite the warm evening. A server handed me a towel. No one else approached me, not my mother. Not even Claire, who stood there frozen, her hand over her mouth. I walked through the crowd in my dripping dress, leaving a trail of water behind me. People stared. Some still chuckled. No one stopped me. I made it to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and broke down. This wasn't just humiliation. This was betrayal. This was my father telling me in front of everyone who mattered that I was worth nothing, that I was a joke, that I existed only to be laughed at, and everyone had agreed with him. I stayed in that bathroom for what felt like hours. In reality, it was probably 20 minutes, long enough for my tears to dry, long enough for anger to replace sadness. When I finally came out, the reception was still going. Music was playing. People were dancing. Life had moved on. Claire found me near the exit. She looked guilty. Emma, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into Dad. He's had a lot to drink and don't, I cut her off. Don't make excuses for him. I'm not. He didn't mean it like that. You know how he is. He thought it was funny. It wasn't funny, Claire. It was cruel. She hugged me and I could feel her trembling. I'm sorry, I really am. Please don't leave. Stay for the rest of the wedding. I pulled away gently. I need to go. I can't be here right now. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. I'll talk to him. I promise. But I knew she wouldn't. She never stood up to our parents. None of us did. I left the venue in my borrowed clothes, my ruined dress in a bag, and drove home in silence. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to forgive and forget. I wasn't going to be the invisible, forgiving daughter anymore. My father had humiliated me in front of everyone. He had made me the punchline of his joke. He had shown me exactly how little I mattered to him. And now I was going to show him what that cost. Over the next few days, I did something I'd never done before. I started digging into my parents' lives, not out of curiosity, out of necessity. And what I found changed everything. My father, Richard, had always presented himself as a successful businessman. He ran a consulting firm, drove an expensive car, and acted like money was never an issue. But something had always felt off. The way my mother would tense up when bills came, the way my father would deflect questions about work, the way they'd sold their bigger house 5 years ago and downgraded, claiming they wanted something cozier. I started looking into it. And what I discovered made my blood run cold. My father's business was failing, had been for years. He was drowning in debt. The expensive car? Leased. The fancy suits? Bought on credit cards that were maxed out. The lavish wedding he'd just thrown for Claire? Paid for with money he'd borrowed from his business partners under false pretenses. He was a fraud, a man living a lie, and my mother knew. She had to know. But it got worse. I found emails, dozens of them, between my father and Claire's fiancé, Marcus. Marcus had been helping my father, lending him money, offering him investment opportunities, basically keeping him afloat. And my father had been using Claire, pushing the marriage, showing off his successful daughter, marrying into wealth to impress potential investors and business associates. Claire wasn't just his favorite child, she was his meal ticket. The wedding wasn't about love or family. It was about maintaining appearances, about convincing people that Richard was still successful, still powerful, still someone worth doing business with. And me? I was useful for planning and execution, but I couldn't be in the spotlight. I wasn't pretty enough, successful enough, or married to someone wealthy enough to boost his image. That's why he humiliated me. Not because he thought it was funny, but because I was threatening to take attention away from Claire Osimtiais. From his perfect, profitable narrative. I sat there staring at those emails, feeling sick, feeling furious, feeling betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. My entire childhood suddenly made sense. The favoritism, the dismissiveness, the constant feeling that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't part of his plan. I was just in the way. But now I had information, and information is power. I started forming a plan. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about exposing the truth, about making sure my father could never use anyone like this again. I spent 2 weeks gathering everything I could: financial records, emails, text messages, testimonies from people he'd wronged. I built a case against him like a lawyer preparing for trial. And then I decided how I would deliver it. 3 weeks after the wedding, my mother called and asked if I'd come to a family dinner. She said it was important, that they wanted to clear the air after what happened at the wedding. I almost laughed. Clear the air, as if a simple apology would fix anything. But I agreed to come because this was my opportunity. I arrived at their house on a Sunday evening. Claire and Marcus were there too. Everyone was being overly nice, overly polite, like they were trying to pretend nothing had happened. My father greeted me with a smile. Emma, good to see you, kiddo. Kiddo. That word made my skin crawl. We sat down for dinner. My mother had made all of Claire's favorite foods naturally. We made small talk, discussed the wedding, looked at photos. Then, halfway through dinner, my father stood up. I wanted to say something, he announced, looking at me. Emma, what happened at the wedding? That was out of line. I'd had too much to drink and I thought I was being funny. But I realize now that I hurt you. And for that, I apologize. Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to accept, to smile and say, "It's okay, Dad," to go back to being the forgiving, invisible daughter. Instead, I pulled out my phone. That's interesting, I said calmly, because I thought you pushed me into that fountain because I was taking attention away from Claire, because you needed everyone focused on her, on your successful daughter who married money, the daughter who's been keeping you financially afloat for the past 2 years. The table went silent. My father's face lost all color. What are you talking about? My mother asked, her voice shaking. I placed my phone on the table and slid it toward the center. On the screen was an email from my father to Marcus, asking for another loan, promising to pay it back once his big deal came through. I'm talking about the fact that Dad is broke, I said, looking directly at him. That his business is failing. That he's been borrowing money from Marcus and using Claire's marriage to maintain his image. That everything about our family is a lie. Claire stared at Marcus. Is this true? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Your father needed some help. I thought I was doing the right thing. How much? Claire demanded. 75,000, I answered for him. Give or take? My mother gasped. My father slammed his hand on the table. You had no right to go through my private correspondence, he shouted. And you had no right to humiliate me in front of 100 people, that I shot back. But here we are. I stood up, pulling out printed copies of emails, financial statements, and loan documents. I placed them on the table one by one. This is who you really are, Dad. A fraud. A man who uses his daughters for his own gain, who treats one like a trophy and the other like garbage, who cares more about appearances than actual family. My father's face was red with rage, but he couldn't deny it. The evidence was right there. Everyone at that wedding thought you were so successful, so proud, so loving, I continued. But you're none of those things. You're a desperate man clinging to an image, and you were willing to destroy your own daughter to maintain it. Claire was crying. My mother sat frozen in shock. I'm done being invisible, I said. I'm done pretending this family is something it's not, Akas. And I'm done protecting you. My father tried to spin it, tried to claim I was exaggerating, that I was bitter and vindictive, but Marcus had seen the documents. And he wasn't happy. You told me those loans were for legitimate business investments, Marcus said quietly, his jaw tight. You said you had guaranteed returns. My father stammered. I do. I just need more time. You lied to me. You used my relationship with your daughter to manipulate me. Claire looked between them, her face pale. Marcus, you gave him $75,000 without telling me? He said it was temporary, that it would help the family business. We don't have a family business, Claire shouted. We have a father who's been lying to everyone. The dinner dissolved into chaos. Accusations flew. My mother cried. My father tried to defend himself, but every word he spoke just dug him deeper. Finally, Marcus stood up. We're leaving. And Richard? I want that money back, all of it. You have 30 days, or I'm taking legal action. He walked out. Claire followed, but not before looking at me with something I'd never seen from her before. respect, maybe even gratitude. My mother turned to me, her face streaked with tears. How could you do this? How could you destroy our family? I didn't destroy it, Mom, I said softly. It was already destroyed. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. I left that house and never looked back. The weeks that followed were messy. My father tried to reach out, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to pleading. I blocked his number. My mother sent texts asking me to reconsider, to forgive, to remember that family is forever. I didn't respond. Claire surprisingly reached out. We met for coffee. I didn't know, she said, about any of it. Marcus is furious. He's demanding the money back, and Dad can't pay it. They might get divorced over this. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Not for what I'd done, but for the pain it caused her. Don't be, she replied. You were right about everything. I've been so blind, so caught up in being the favorite that I never saw what it cost you, what it cost all of us. We cried together, two sisters finally seeing each other clearly. Claire and Marcus worked through it. Their marriage survived, though it was rocky for a while. Marcus got his money back, eventually, after my father sold off assets and downsized his life significantly. My father's business collapsed completely 6 months later. His reputation was destroyed. The people he'd been trying to impress all abandoned him. He sent me one final email. It wasn't an apology. It was an accusation. He blamed me for ruining his life, for being vindictive, for not understanding that family protects family. I deleted it without responding. Because here's what I learned. Family shouldn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Real love doesn't demand invisibility. Real respect doesn't come with conditions. My father chose appearances over his daughter. He chose applause over integrity. And when I finally stood up for myself, he couldn't handle it. That's not my failure. That's his. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I want you to know something. You are not wrong for wanting to be seen. You are not selfish for demanding respect. You are not vindictive for setting boundaries. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally are the ones who hurt us the most, and sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. I didn't destroy my family. I revealed the truth, and if the truth destroys something, then it wasn't built on a solid foundation to begin with. Today, I have a good relationship with Claire. She's working on herself, on understanding the dynamics that shaped our childhood. We're healing together. My mother still tries to get me to reconcile with my father. I've told her that I'm open to it, but only if he truly takes accountability. Not just says sorry, but actually understands what he did and why it was wrong. So far, that hasn't happened. And I'm okay with that because I've built a life where I'm not invisible, where I'm valued, where I don't have to beg for scraps of attention or approval. The fountain incident was the worst moment of my life, but it was also the moment that set me free. My father wanted applause. He got it, but it cost him his daughter, and honestly, that's the consequence he earned. If someone in your life treats you like you're worthless, believe their actions. And then decide if you want to keep giving them the power to hurt you. I chose to take my power back, and I've never regretted it.